we'll welcome Ulysses onto camera as well. Hi, how's everyone doing?
Great.
All right, so we're live on Facebook and we're recording on Zoom. So I just want to start by saying thank you everyone for being here. Excited to have this event with you all tonight. And there's a lot of exciting things to talk about. We're going to try to cram it all into about an hour. If we go a little over, that'll be okay. And then of course, we'll provide contact information and how to get involved in these support efforts going forward. So first of all, I just want to welcome our guests. And so tonight we have with us City Council Person-elect Ulysses Hernandez in CD1 with a giant win in the primary and headed into the City Council seat with a mandate. So we're very excited to have her. Thank you, Ulysses, for being here. And the guest of the hour, Fatima Iqbal-Zubair, is that correct?
Iqbal-Zubair.
Iqbal-Zubair, thank you. Running in AD 65, a contentious race. There's a lot to talk about. Fatima is a giant for healthcare and for progressive issues in California. And so we're here tonight to support your race and to hear more about what we can do for the Get Out the Vote effort. So thank you. My name is Michelle Manos. I'm the current chair of the California Progressive Alliance, and I'm so humbled and honored to be with both of you all tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Fatima, for inviting me to join you. Really excited.
Oh my God, it's amazing to be in space with you.
All right, so we have like a little list of topics. We're going to keep it super conversational. We're going to be reminding you that, this is also a fundraiser for Fatima. So along the way, you will see the donation link posted. We hope that you will use it a couple dollars at a time as you feel inspired. That is why we're here. So let's start by kicking it off right now. Before we get too deep into the issue by issue, let's talk about where we're at in Los Angeles right now as we go into Get Out the Vote for this election season. I want to start by asking, a pretty obvious question, which is, how do we feel about what's going on in City Council right now, and how do we feel that this shakeup is going to affect the future in politics? I'll start with Ulysses going into City Council seat 1. Can you give us like a briefing on what you're thinking about all this chaos?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with what's happening. I'll be very quick. 3 council members and the president of the Labor Federation of LA County were caught, recorded having a racist, anti-Black, homophobic, anti-Semitic, anti-Indigenous conversation. And, right now we're in the moment where Ron Herrera, LA Fed president, has resigned. Former council president Nir Martinez has also resigned. And we have 2 other council members that are holding our city hostage, essentially, Kevin De Leon and Gil Cedillo. Luckily, I beat Gil Cedillo, so he'll be out at the latest December 11th. But Kevin De Leon still has 2 years to go. And so, I was struggling a little bit. I've been through like a roller coaster of emotions, angry, sad, disappointed. I'm angry again because of the lack of accountability for these individuals. But something that my friend told me that really kind of grounded me was like, the truth shall set us free. And what does that mean? For the last several years, LA City has put forward many anti-Black racist policies, such as 4118, the criminalization of people experiencing homelessness, renters. And so those policies are no longer going to be able to be passed under the guise of making LA better, because we know that the roots of those policies are racist. And so I believe that we're going to be in a much better place, crossing fingers that our colleagues Hugo Soto Martinez makes it into the 13th, which I have high hopes, Aaron Darling for CD 11, Faisal Gill and Kenneth Mejia as well for city controller and city attorney. And so I right now it's a really painful moment, a really ugly moment in our city council, but it's also exposed one of the most beautiful things of our city, the beautiful diversity that we have, but the amount of solidarity that exists on the community level that is rising up and is being presently like visible to us. So, I mean, it's difficult, but again, we are in a much better place, I feel, and we're going to be in a better place coming into the new years. We just gotta, hopefully these folks take accountability and resign, but if not, I know that there's process to take people out, such as Kevin De Leon through a recall, but I'm hopeful, very hopeful.
Thanks, Ulysses, for that wonderful summary. And frankly, I have high hopes also the landslide that you achieved in the primary this year. I can't imagine what you must be feeling like going into this situation. I'm sure this is not what you expected, but it's certainly, while it's a painful moment, like you said, it's also a moment of opportunity. And so, Fatima, I'm sure you're no stranger to those types of attacks. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of us, we were disappointed and shocked, but frankly, like not surprised to know that that is how people are being spoken about behind closed doors. Tell us a little bit about what came up for you, and the things that you've had to take on in your situation in your race.
Yeah, well, first thing I'll say is, I think I just want to shout out council member like Ulysses, because I think she's ripe for this moment, right? If we can think of a better leader entering to bring a coalition together, I mean, that is her. The people trust her, and there are folks on the inside that trust her, that are doing the good work, and I think that's the type of leader you need. So I'm really proud of her and everything she's doing. But yeah, 100%. All of this vitriol exists in many different places. One thing I will note is that it shows kind of how our campaign is different from my opponent, Gibson. I right away the same day called on their resignation. My opponent had to wait till the president himself stepped in to say something. And I think as someone who's Democratic caucus chair, who's leader, that's freaking ridiculous. I'm sorry, it's ridiculous. Like that you can't say anything. Why? Because you want to protect your friends? Or the people? Why? Because you want to protect your donors, like your special. I don't understand. I don't get it. And I think that's scary.
Fatima,
right?
Your opponent is a caucus chair?
Yes, he's the Democratic caucus chair.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Kind of second in line to the speaker. Yeah. So it's really disappointing. And someone in that leadership role to not say something when people are looking at you to say something, I think speaks volumes. Something else that happened to me was, he's also said about me, she's not from this country, implying that I can't represent this district, when our district is frankly very multiracial, but has a large immigrant population. I mean, I shouldn't have to make excuses for why that is even wrong on so many levels. I think the beautiful icing on the cake we're seeing with what happened is, I think of that picture of like Ulysses and Ugo and Isaac, right, standing there. I think the first meeting after, and just that multiracial coalition building is how we're going to win on, class issues and even race issues and all these issues. And we should not be going about the business of dividing each other up. We should be in the business of including everyone in, because when you bring everyone in, we all lift up together, right? And so that, I think, is radically the vision that I have as someone who's been othered, as a Muslim woman who's visibly Muslim, as someone who's brown, as someone who's a woman, as someone, who's unapologetic, with all those intersectionalities. I have been told to wait my turn. I have been told to step aside, right? But why would we step aside when someone who is, made for this role is doing the wrong thing, right? Groomed for this role is doing the wrong thing, is saying xenophobic things, is not speaking up against corruption. So 100%, yes, I've been exposed to those things. And now my opponent is sending hit pieces saying I'm untransparent, I'm untrustworthy. It's like, he's scared, right? They send hit pieces when they are scared that our message is so positive and so strong. Our issues, we constantly talk about literally at the doors, housing. We talk about care for our communities and what that looks like. Our entire public safety mailer was about investing in healthcare, investing in housing, investing in education. What was his criminal justice mailer about? It had bullets on it and guns. I'm sorry. Bullets. Like that is fear mongering. That is fear mongering. That is not what we're about, right? Like public safety is not about drawing fear. It's about talking about why we even have an issue of folks that are struggling to make ends meet, who are getting involved in things they don't need to. Why is that an issue? Talk about the root of the issue. Sorry, I'm deterring from.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I would love for you to hone in a little bit on your opponent's position on things like police funding, because that's something that I think every single candidate should be asked in this race, in this time, in this city. And so I think you have a stark contrast with your opponent on that issue. Is that right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And Ulysses knows this too with the groups that she works with. Like we're really proud to have La Defensa's endorsement and IJ Action. We obviously don't take police union association money. Look, I've had, police brutality. Look, it starts with this. I'm also raising a son that's autistic. So this is honestly a selfish issue for me. With over policing in our community and lack of accountability, my son is going to be, I'm sad to say, God forbid, knock on wood, I don't want him to be one of those victims one day. When so then you bring in people of color, right? You bring in folks with special needs. I mean, we have seen police funding, at a really, really high level, right? Majority of our taxpayer money and all of that, but it's not really made our community members feel safe. And when I talk to folks at the doors, I talk to folks that are older, because it's a myth. Like, we think that this issue of care, not cops, is like, a myth of younger people, of progressives. It's not. I've talked to 65-year-old, 70-year-old elderly people who will complain to me about the sheriff's department not showing up, or even like ignoring their calls, not really doing their job or making them feel safe. They're sick of it. And so folks want real community safety. And I outlined what that looks like. And, I do believe that there is a stark contrast. And the contrast is here. Let me be even more clear. Not only does he take the most in police funding, he advocates for increase in prison funding. I know this from the inside from people as well. There was a bill to end qualified immunity, and we got SB2, which was, decertification. But, Black Lives Matter called him out on that, right? I mean, I don't know if y'all saw that, but, and then magically he got placed on the committee for police reform. Like, these are like intentional things of how our system tries to perpetuate policing and incarceration and the prison industry. That is not the direction we need to go into, right? The direction we need to go into is the work Ulysses is doing, the work Assemblymember Isaac Bryan is doing, right? But the problem is we don't have large enough coalitions in these spaces, like, who believe in complete community care and real community safety. So that's why I'm excited to be up there, right? There are people up there that I know more than me on this issue, but I know I'm on the right side, and I will co-author those bills, sponsor those bills, help with votes for them. I will not try to compromise it or try to increase our prison population or increase police funding or ever talk for increase in policing. Because I'll tell you, being in South LA, right? Me, myself living, I'm in South LA and unincorporated South LA, having students. I mean, I literally, it hasn't kept us safe. Gibson always talked also about gun violence. He had a landmark bill on that. But you can't talk about crime in our issue and public safety from a surface level issue. All Democrats believe we need to get guns off the streets. That's been going on for decades, right? We need to get guns off the streets, yes, but that is the surface issue. We need to talk about how our communities can build real safety. And that's what our campaign is different. We bring intersectional leadership. We believe that healthcare, the right to decommodify housing and healthcare is important, the right to go into a quality school and tuition-free college, and blocking barriers of opportunity and accomplishment. That is what's going to create safety. That's what's going to create opportunity and hope in our communities. And that's a stark difference to my opponent.
Thank you. Wow. That's a lot of information to cram, but honestly, we need to be hearing exactly what's at risk here. I want to ask.
Can I plug in real quick? Just to
totally.
That, what Fatima is saying is so critically important, because when we think about what happens at a local level, at a county level, city, county, a lot of the budget that we get, a lot of the mandates, a lot of the laws that impact our lives come from the state level. When we think about laws that, will make it possible for young people to get diverted into care instead of probation camps, a lot of those resources will come from the state level. Whether or not we can pass public safety reforms really happens at the state level. Like, we think that unions have a stronghold locally. At the state level, we are a majority Democratic government at the state level, yet we could not get police reform passed in the year that George Floyd was killed and that Breonna Taylor was killed. And that is because people are sold out to corporations, law enforcement special interest groups, the police, the prison guards union. And so why is it important that we get someone like Fatima up there who understands that public safety is not just police and probation, but that it's housing, it's jobs, it's supporting young people? It's because there's not many people up there who understand that vision. I could probably in one hand name people who are champions on some of these issues. And so we need people up there that are not going to take dirty money, that are not going to be sold out, because when we have ideas on a local level, we don't have a lot of options on good people that have a vision of community first on a public safety platform that is holistic, that's not more police. And so I just want to highlight that, yeah, there's a lot that happens at the state level, but it really does impact our lives. Every year, there's a budget cycle at the state level with billions of dollars on the line. Every year is a legislative cycle where dozens and dozens of bills go through. And so it's just really important that we get someone up there who understands the vision and what's happening locally on the ground, and that's not disconnected and again sold out to corporations, because really who funds your campaigns really matters. And if you're already bought off by oil, big companies, corporations, and the police, then who are you accountable to? Not the people.
Okay, so I want everybody who's watching right now, if you believe in corporate-free candidates and you want to see Fatima get to the assembly in California, put a 5 on it right now. California Progressive Alliance is going to drop the fundraising link in the comments. If you're not sure where to find it, send us a message and we'll make sure you get it. All right, put a couple dollars on it right now. And Ulysses, I want to keep with you for a second. Fatima touched on the importance of coalition building. And I think you are going to be in a position to do that when you get into LA City Council. Everything is going to be in some ways brand new, right? When you get there. And so can you talk to us for just a minute on how you're going to take that on in this situation and climate?
Yeah, so I mean, my whole job has been to build coalitions because one individual can't do anything by themselves. And so all the work I've done, whether it's been at a county level, whether it's been at the state level, has been to build tables of people and communities directly impacted by systemic issues, taking the lead of these individuals, building coalitions that represent different sectors. So it's a spectrum. For example, like Measure J was 125 organizations that supported Measure J in LA County. That moved 10% of locally generated tax dollars into community and out of the carceral system. That spectrum of organizations range from people working on homelessness to street vendor issues to young people to people like abolitionists like myself. And so it's a spectrum. And the thing is, when you look at all these different systemic issues, it's really impacting almost the same communities. When you think about oil drilling, when you think about criminalization, when you think about homelessness, it's Black, Brown, Indigenous, low income, LGBTQ people that experience the heaviest brunt of all of those things. And so I think for the city council, it'll be new. And it's going to be new for them to see more people in there from community. But for me, it's not new. I kept saying during our campaign that when we won the election, we would all go into City Hall, not just us. And I mean, I think that's the difference, that we recognize that the power is with the people. The power is not with the legislators. And policy ideas don't normally come from the top down. They come from community up, because the people closest to the problems are the closest to the solutions. And so we're just trying to be a vehicle and a door for people to be able to do that, because you can't do anything by yourself. And so this is the moment where we need to reinforce that, reinforce those connections, those bridges, those relationships, that solidarity, because it's really, you know, when we think about those issues, it's our communities that are most disproportionately impacted.
Yeah, thank you. Fatima, how are you going to bring the community with you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm probably the one of the most least likely people to run for office, right? Like as a teacher, you know, as a mother to a young son going to public school, someone that looks like me, right? So like yeah, how am I going to bring the community with me? I mean, I'm still rooted. I still work with my students like weekly, you know, so, and I did, that's very intentional. When I decided to run for office, it happened very naturally. It was literally contamination at my schools, water, lead, arsenic, me teaching those subjects, studying with my students, investigating it, and us literally going to community meetings together, being on, you know, different community stakeholder groups together. And that's what led me to actually want to be, you know, I was appointed commissioner by my opponent, which is kind of ironic, right? Back then, I was trying to do more work at the state level, because like Ulysses, I saw that a lot of these issues are higher up, like the infrastructure. We need to replace lead pipes in our district, like to clean up the water, to you know, to make sure that we can really hold our refineries accountable. A lot of that is like state agency work, right? And state legislative work. And it you know, and so I wanted to see what change could happen. And so how am I going to bring the community with me? I mean, it's because my work and my roots started from that. I didn't, you know, plan my political future. I ran. Honestly, I'll tell you the moment I ran, I decided to run. It was when it was one of my off days from teaching, and I was in there actually talking to someone from Food and Water Action, right? Because I was trying to bring a program into my school. And she's like, you know what, let's check out Gibson's record. I know you're his commissioner, but let's look at his record. And I literally, Michelle, had tears in my eyes. Like I felt it to my core, because I wasn't honestly a political activist. I wasn't. I was like a very local activist advocating for my students and for my community in Carson. You know, we live where our city is also like a dumping ground for toxic chemicals. I had tears in my eyes because knowing, you know, the several years I was organizing in that very locally, my name wasn't really known, you know, but I was thinking like, okay, like how could someone who has the power, like in this thing, the power, the authority, right, to make these decisions and change these things and actually make transformational change, they're playing like chess with our lives. Like they're just saying like, oh, well, what does my corporation want me to vote now? What is my, when you're like, not just representing, you don't remember the state legislature, you're not just representing a district, you're representing the millions and millions of people in the state of California, right? The transformative potential there is crazy. So for me, like I said, it's very intentional that I still work with my students because I want to always be rooted in that. And honestly, I want to be able to, you know, bring my students up to Sacramento, like literally and figuratively with me, to advocate on these bills, right? To really make the youth voice heard, right? To make, you know, like community voices, like Communities for Better Environment, like the groups Ulysses is with, like make sure their voice is heard and not laughed at and not just a talking point. But I want people to feel, right? Really feel and really make sure that Sacramento hears them, like hears them loud and clear. Because right now, honestly, their voices are shut out, or, you know, politicians use it as a talking point, like, oh, my community members, this, you know, community I represent. But their voices aren't, you know, we need to make sure that their voices are brought up with us to Sacramento. I want to not only, like, obviously figuratively, like in my way of like even getting to this, running for this seat, but also literally, like, we need ways, honestly, Michelle, like some little ways to make Sacramento accessible. You know, Alex Lee had a great bill that, by the way, your opponent, do you remember that bill? To make communication, accessible, right? In COVID, I believe they had extra initiatives, to make, for example, you could hear and listen to committee meetings and things like that. Unfortunately, that bill didn't pass. I believe it was vetoed by the governor, but it was actually, you know, your opponent, Ulysses, that kind of, mocked Alex for this bill. And it's like, it's a common sense bill. Like that's a kind of bill, how we bring a community with us. You let them into the halls where these decisions are made. You make sure that their voice dictates what's being said. And these closed door meetings aren't happening behind closed doors, because we see from the tapes, and I'm sure in Sacramento, what happens in closed door meetings. Honestly, when you're bought out, you're just there to solidify your power. You're not there to solidify the working class people. And so that is something literal I want to do. Honestly, it might not seem like the most transformative bill, but I believe it is, because I think that if you can do things to make these places of power more accessible to the community, I don't think a lot of these legislators will be able to say some of the things that they say.
Fatima, talk to us a little bit about what the assembly does and what is possible on day one when you're in office.
Yeah. Okay. So what the assembly does, to keep it simple, as a teacher perspective, I always say the state legislature is kind of like Congress, right, for California, essentially, right? We have the state assembly, which is kind of like the House, right? We have the Senate, which is like the Senate, and we have the governor, which is kind of like the president of our state, right? So honestly, it's very transformative. When our country was founded, states were given a lot of power to make laws. We can, pretty much pass any law in criminal justice, in housing, because we see these laws, right? We see, what is it? I think it's Congresswoman Cori Bush, or was it Ayanna Pressley? Ulysses will know better, but trying to end, I think, qualified immunity. I think the justice, I'm naming the bill wrong, but we can see a lot of those bills happen first in the state level. Another example is healthcare, right? Universal healthcare can be achieved at the state level. Decommodifying housing, social housing can happen at the state level. So I was going to say the most important part is that, like, when we see the roadblocks, like the filibuster, like the Republican threat, like Eunice says, we have Democrats up there, right? They're just not courageous. Sacramento does not have a Republican problem. We have a corporate sold out Democratic problem. So we can see a lot of these bills, these visions pass. And I believe in California, now I'm hearing the fourth largest economy in the world, can lead the way, right? With the wealth we have, with the resources we have. And that's why it's urgent that we do lead the way. Because if any state can pass these visionary bills in housing, criminal justice, right, in healthcare, it is our state. The only thing the legislature can't do, we can protect immigrants, but obviously the pathway to citizenship is going to be at the federal level. But that's like literally like one of the only things you can still like protect. DACA, you can still guarantee a right to attorney to undocumented folks. Something I want to do is give undocumented folks the right to vote, those in prison the right to vote. There's still a lot you can do to uplift immigrant voices. There's a lot of possibility at the state legislature. And honestly, it's a travesty that with the type of, solidly blue state we are, that we have some of the worst healthcare crisis and the worst housing crisis. And that our rents, did you all know that our rents, not only what we pay for rent, but even our mortgage is highest in the entire world, not just in the nation. We pay more than a third of our income, at least, right? On average, probably a lot higher for many people. And that's the highest in the entire world. How crazy is that we have the most money in the entire nation, the fifth largest economy, and we're allowing, our people like to struggle like that.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that what we have on our hands is people keep saying things like unprecedented crisis. If you ask me, I have an academic background, so to speak, and, you know, those they call like the smartest minds in the room have been talking about the end of capitalism for about 20 years now. In my mind, from what I know of the way that our economics goes in cycles, like when you see the pillars of something crumbling, that's when you know the whole thing is at risk, right? So the pillars of capitalism were supposed to be innovation and infrastructure and healthy competition, and all of those things have now crumbled and fallen by the wayside, right? And so we have those with the most power continuing to scramble for the most resources so that they can get theirs and have their family prepared. And the rest of us, frankly, like, when it hits the fan, we are all the unwashed masses, right? And so, it will be an extraordinary moment when they see that, and when the people see that when we come together and when we rise up, that is when we have the power, because that's the only thing that's going to be able to beat their resources, right? Like we say this again and again, we've been saying it until we're blue in the face. But right now are these moments when we have to put our money where our mouth is. We have to put our shoes on. We have to pick up the phone and send an extra text message and make sure that we're connecting with a local campaign and make sure that you're seeking out someone who does represent your values. And as Fatima has done, as Ulysses has done, if that person is not in your district, perhaps you are that person, right? And sometimes it is incumbent upon us to, for instance, right, Fatima, look at our child and say, I can't not do this. Even though it's going to take my time away from you, I have to try and create a better world for you. And so it's so extraordinary when a parent does take that leap, Fatima, to run for office. And we really appreciate it because you're out there fighting for all of us. Talk to us a little bit about being a mom and what it means to, be fighting for, a space as a femme leader, as a Muslim woman, as a hijab wearing woman, and as a mom of a young person that you just want to see a better world. Tell us a little bit about the uphill battle about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all like an honor and a privilege to be able to even run for office, because like you inspire countless people, right, when you do this, like and you run, and especially if you look different than like being white and being men, like if any other intersectionality of identity. And I obviously have many intersectionalities. I think it inspires a lot of people. I think yes, it is difficult, but I think why it kind of why like it's not difficult. I think it's because, and probably for Ulysses too, like even though like I don't want to speak for her, but like even though things are difficult and people say there's sometimes very few, like it's a small minority of people that say hurtful things or bad things, our fight for justice is much stronger, and that's so empowering. And I think having a son, like I'm honestly selfish. I don't want my son to grow up with asthma or be at the brunt of police brutality, and not know what to do. And I want him to have a good life, and I want my students to have a good life. And so I think, yeah, even though there have been voices that might be Islamophobic or xenophobic, including my opponent, right, against me, and I believe against other immigrants when you make comments like that. But I choose to focus on the vast majority of my community, which is so uplifting to me, which is so empowering to me when I speak to them and when I listen to them and when they share their stories and they're just so happy that someone came to their door and asked them what they care about. Like, I mean, that is what I choose to fill my heart and soul with, and that's what uplifts me. And like, when my son comes up to me and is just so inspired and is telling people at school, like, oh, look at my mom, like you should vote for my mom, like, and she's running for office, and like it's just really proud, like it's tremendous. Like he is so invested, in our campaign in so many ways. And honestly, it's a learning experience. I just want to add this too, like, when, for example, his teacher, he has great teachers, but like they talked about public safety. And he looked at me, I remember it was one of those Zoom classes and they were talking about the police. And he's like, yeah, but mom, sometimes police do bad things too, right? And this was when he was 6 years old, right? And it's because we have these conversations, right? About what public safety is, and that, we have to hold, police officers accountable, and that there are police officers that do bad things. It's like we have to acknowledge these things. And like, I think that makes me proud that as a young child, he can look out there and think about these things. And I think it's teaching him a lot. He'll drive by empty buildings and abandoned hotels and say, Mom, why is that just sitting empty? Why don't they house people there? Like, I don't understand. Like, why don't they house people? Like, he's saying these things as a young child because of the privilege, I have of being able to run for office. And just like him, that's what I hope we inspire people. I hope our campaign is making people think of the possibilities, make them critically think about how much their government is serving them, and the solutions that exist, like Eunice said, in the community that aren't being heard.
Eunice, can I ask you the same question? Just talk to us a little bit about finding your space as a femme leader in politics, and what it means to you to be fighting this uphill battle. And have you experienced, like the misogyny of LA politics, and what does it take to overcome that day to day?
Yes, definitely experienced that. I've heard that the incumbent has referred to me as a kid, as a child, in the past to other
That's
people.
rude.
And yeah, I mean, this child beat him in a primary, which has only happened 3 times in the city of LA. So we can say whatever he'd like, but most of my work around criminal justice reform, around trying to stop the carceral system, has been across the table with people who make way more money than me, who have many more degrees than me. And so I've had a lot of practice around breaking that fear, that feeling that I shouldn't be there, that I'm not good enough, because I felt that they would smell fear. And so I have years of practice of reminding myself that, as someone who's a survivor of many things, sexual violence, other issues, that my loved ones have, survived these different things, have been impacted by these different things, that, I have the experience, I have the vision to be in that space, to push back on what they're saying. And so I think that's helped create like a little bit of a hard shell around, some of those attacks. And so the way that they talk about me, like I have no experience. I mean, in the audio recordings, they refer to me as a 31-year-old rookie who's a lawyer. I'm not even a lawyer. And so, that just goes to show they have no idea who we are. And that's okay, because they're not connected to community. They're not on the ground doing the work. And that just shows that their analysis is immature and is just, on the surface. So I don't worry about that too much. Mostly I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do I empower others? My motto is that, if you walk through the door, you need to hold it open for those that, to come through as well. And so that's why, please, everybody, support Fatima. We need her up there, because we need people who reflect, the values, what we want to see, people who are impacted by these different issues and represent different identities. I don't know how many Muslim women are in the assembly, but it's 2022. We need to have many of them. And so, Fatima, I can't wait to see you up there. But it is something that I've had many years to deal with, because in the beginning, I definitely would not, I would not feel strong in those rooms, but it's something that I had to overcome.
So we have a question that was messaged in. And so someone wants to ask, will the two of you be able to work together in any capacity if you both are in office at the same time?
Yeah, I'll answer that. Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. I can't wait.
Yeah, I don't can't wait either. I mean, we actually understand each other, listen to each other. Like,
but like, so
yeah.
Talk to us a little about how the assembly and the LA City Council can help each other.
Yeah. And Eunice has done more like cross county. I know I've done a bit as well as a delegate in the legislature, so she can talk to this as well. But one thing I'll say is, yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, in issues of, I like, for example, like in criminal justice and in housing, right? For example, in housing, a lot of times, we can't enact, right, rent control because of Costa-Hawkins and Ellis, and because of the tenants having lack of protection. Councilmember Rahman has talked a lot about this, like the roadblocks at the state level. So 100%. What I would do honestly is like, listen. Like I would listen to our councilwomen, like Eunice Hernandez, and like I would listen to all the council members, but there are some I'm more aligned with than others that I would trust more to have their ear to the ground, even though I listen to everyone. So it's like, I would see like what are the roadblocks to enacting, like less policing, having less pathways, like Ulysses talked about, for folks when they are imprisoned, right? When they are incarcerated to get out, like those kind of local issues that they're not seeing met, I would want to push for at the state level. If there's any roadblocks or any laws or any inhibitions right now to getting that done, I would want to pass laws or bring funding down, whatever it takes, right? Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's roadblocks in laws that we need to overturn or we need to push more funding into, right? Whatever it is, 100%. I would actually trust, and this is me being very vulnerable and humble, because like I want to be a leader, like he says, from the bottom up. I wouldn't go telling the city council what is good for them or what they need for their constituents. I would go to like Ulysses and hopefully Hugo and Kenneth, who's auditing, and say, what are you seeing? What are some of the discrepancies you're seeing? What are things directly in your district that you need help with, right? Because I think that bottom up leadership is important. So that's honestly what I would want to do as a legislator, is not top down from the top down, because I think good laws and good policy start from the bottom up, right? So I would go to my members in my district, community organizations. I would go to, council members represent that district, neighborhood council meetings. I mean, all of it, and figure out what the top issues are. And I know some of that now because I do so much door knocking and we ask people what they care about. But I would respect those voices in these local officials that to tell me some of those things, right? Because that, I think, is what good government is. You need to have intersectional leadership, not just like vertically, but horizontally and vertically, right? And I think that's how you see the magic happen, right? So if Ulysses is working on something with policing or with reentry, and she's seeing a roadblock to an issue or a state law that is inhibiting her from completing her work, that's something I want to help her out in, right? And I would listen to that, and I would do whatever I can to work with my coalition up there to get it done.
Yes, and the state has, our state has been impacted by a few months of lower revenue than we expected. But in one of the last budget cycles, there was over $90 billion surplus. At the local level, in the city level, we don't have our own health department or mental health department. And so some things that we could work on is trying to get resources to expand mental health crisis response teams. But something I'm really looking forward to is oil wells, working together on figuring out how we can cap oil wells. In my district, we have over 700 oil wells. Many of them remained uncapped. Many developers building on top of oil wells, causing oil spills in the middle of the city of LA in 2021. And so, oil wells, I didn't know much about them before running for office. And now, to see that there's oil infrastructure sticking out of people's front yards, like that right there is killing our communities. And so, I know that Fatima's district is very much impacted by this issue as well. And so we're figuring out how we can collaborate on that is something I look forward to, because it's shortening people's lives, and people should really look and Google like what the LA County and LA City looked like back in the day with all these oil wells. That's what we're struggling with right now. And the state can really help us with remediating that land and bringing down the resources and agencies. And the last piece is there's a toxic site on Avenue 34 in my district where they want to put housing development there. And it's being built on toxic soil where hundreds of gallons of chemicals were dumped from there into the LA River, sucked into that soil. It's being dug up right now. And it's actually right across the street from an elementary school. And the dirt and dust is flying into that area and across the street where there's renters. And so working with people like Fatima to hold the state departments accountable that are responsible for making sure that these, horrible, like digging up of dirty soil doesn't happen anymore, that it happens under the right policies, is another piece that I'm looking for and looking forward to working with her on that.
Yeah. Can I speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and we'd love to hear what are the exact concerns happening in your district.
Yeah, but also just what Ulysses said, 100%. One thing I want to note is that our environmental state agencies have gotten really bad scores the past few years. So we have a lot of these laws passed in labor, even in environment and housing, and the state agencies don't implement it. And what I hear from a lot of unions is that even when assembly members support a bill, they don't do the hard work of follow through, right? And that's really important for local politics, policies, to make sure that when you pass a bill that is actually being implemented, and that's for example, we passed a 3,200 feet buffer bill finally, but my worry is who's going to hold them accountable, right? The state agencies, the county to get this actually done, right? 100% solar remediation. What I want to talk about is intersectional issues too, because what's Eunice seeing in her district is happening all over the state and in my district. We have that issue when housing is built, that it's built on toxic soil. Literally the reason I'm running is because my school was contaminated. So it's an issue that's going to benefit everyone. And 100% those are the things we can do. And that's where Eunice says a lot of the funding is that we need to push down to make sure that it gets done. And one thing, yeah. So I just wanted to share that. I mean, yeah. And one thing I want to say is a lot of the big ideas too. So like, we didn't talk yet about like a just transition and stuff like that, right? But I think that's part of what excites me about the state legislature, because, you know, these are big questions, right? Like, it's not easy to talk about changing the infrastructure of our state, the energy grid of our state to sustainable energy. And it's one of the reasons actually I decided to run, you know, because when I see a lack of not only failure of action, but a lack of like callousness and like saying like, oh, we'll do this later. Like, who cares about our planet? Or, you know, let's just talk about police brutality after George Floyd. And like, you know, I'm hoping people forget about it later, right? It's like, no, like we don't forget about it, because there are people literally struggling with these issues day in and day out. One last thing I'll end with, because my opponent has said this. He said, and this is very important in how we need to lead. He said that you know, I choose to advocate for things that kill people quickly and not slowly, or something of that nature. You know, what kills you quicker? Like, why are we even asking what kills you quicker? Like, why do we have to choose between getting guns off the streets and like capping oil wells, right? And healthcare. Like, what kind of leadership is that for South LA, for Oakland, for like so many middle, like working class communities? Like what kills you faster? That's not the question you should be asking. It's the question you should be asking is, how do I solve these issues and how do I help people thrive? Right? Like, it's ridiculous.
And you got to keep people safe in the short term, the medium term, and the long term, right? Like, we don't want them getting killed going to school, but we don't want also people, you know, dying 1 year before or 1 year after their retirement from a preventable disease based on their environment, right? So, you know, you have this happening on every level of the spectrum. And to say we don't have the capacity to address more than one, or we don't have the capacity to address all these things that are deeply affecting us, is just untrue, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, people have been fighting in the communities that are being poisoned for years to be heard, to say, you know, our children's playgrounds, our schools are being poisoned, the legal setbacks are not even being honored, right? You have companies all the time that are violating the laws and ordinance that we do have in place, and nothing gets done about it. And when they do have a fine or a violation, then it's a drop in the bucket for them. It's just considered a cost of doing business. It's like a billionaire parking and getting a parking ticket. It doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have major systemic issues that we have to address. And Fatima, sounds like you're willing to be, you know, the loudest, most justice focused voice in the room if you need to be.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to add to that is this. I mean, yes, and I'm only one person, right? So I'm like, I'm not gonna do it alone, but you know, I mean, I am a loud voice, and I do feel like, especially as femmes, like, you know, this is talking about, like, we have a certain type of fight, not just when we're femmes and women, but women of color, but we are progressive and bold. Like, I think that's a different kind of voice. You know, it's why I was such a fan of Unity's campaign. Like, I really resonated with the type of voice she had. I think it was so unapologetic. And it was bold. And, you know, one last thing I wanted to say was, there have been studies done, and Ulysses might know about these too, that it's not only that we need to solve these issues, Michelle, systemically, it's that when we, for example, increase green space in the community, reduce concrete, you know, have housing, you know, we have services for the homeless, guess what decreases? Crime. Like these issues are not just like, we need to address these as intersectional issues because it's important. It's that it solves problems. Like, when you address each of these issues, other problems start solving. You'll see crime decrease, you'll see poverty decrease.
And we have proven this in other places and at other times.
When you invest,
it's not a guess or
exactly,
like an assumption.
Yeah, when you invest in community, I mean, you see other metrics improve. It's not rocket science. Exactly right, Michelle. This is fact-based. If you look at other communities, other countries, other states that even are doing this on a micro level, you see, you know, everyone talks about crime these days. Crime is like the fear-mongering thing. Well, what you care about crime, then invest in community, right? Care for community, and you'll see all of that go away. And this is not a pie in the sky idea, like my opponent likes to talk about my ideas. The staff says my ideas are pie in the sky. These are not pie in the sky ideas. You look at other roadmaps for how it is being done, and this is what you see. And I will say it again on the air, because I know, Ulysses, you had a hard time with this too. My opponent has yet to show up for a forum, for a debate, to talk about these, Michelle, very important policy issues. I want to hear his ideas. I want to hear him defend his record, and I want to share my vision. And
so he'll put you on a mailer, but he won't come see you face to face. Okay.
Exactly.
We see you. Like, we see you.
I'm sick of that. I love talking to Ulysses, but it's like, come on, like, I'd rather have Gibson here, and you know what? It's just like,
I mean, frankly, yeah.
Probably whoop it too. Because I remember the one when my incumbent finally appeared to a debate, it was to get the matching funds check for the city. And it was probably one of the most expensive whoopings that anybody's ever gotten. I mean, they're scared, you know, because your ideas are not pie in the sky. They're pragmatic. Yep. Green space is shown to improve mental health. This is not, you know, this is not unreal. Like, it's happening. And so that's why they're scared. But you're doing a great job.
And, you know, I think there's just an extraordinary groundswell of things that have happened. You know, the progressive movement has had many influxes over its life, the anti-war movement, the environmental movement, the feminist movement. And, you know, Bernie Sanders for a lot of us was a moment as well as a movement, right? Bernie Sanders was a moment that brought a lot of people together. And then we had, you know, Standing Rock, and then. And so many of us now have been through the fire and been in the streets and been in the city council meetings and been on the organizing calls. And, you know, it's so extraordinary to see our people stepping into this moment and stepping into these places of power. We've taken some licks. We've learned a lot of lessons. We've gotten our freaking elbows and knees bruised along the way. You know, we've fallen and picked ourselves back up. And like, we're no dummies anymore. Like, we're not brand new anymore, right? And we understand that you can't fool us when the metrics exist, the numbers exist. Other countries, other communities have done different things, have found success through investment. We can point to those things, right? We know now through the internet and through the wide availability of communication with one another, we know that America is unique in its failings to the people, right? We have lost our way by assigning credit scores and assigning student debt and assigning lunch debt to kids and all these things that are preventable, like you said, Fatima, from the ground up. Who's going to deal with lunch debt? Not the president of the United States. That's going to be a Ulysses and a Fatima thing. You know, we can't have students not getting their lunch because they can't pay for the food that they need. Right. And then we hearken back to the lessons that we've learned in the past when we know communities have stepped up, and all the way back to the Black Panthers and the meal programs that they provided for students. And we know these blueprints work. And we watch communities thrive when they have what they need. And we watch communities fail when systemically resources are taken from them. So in this moment in Los Angeles, while we are experiencing many cracks in our foundation, we also have a moment for some flowers to bloom through those cracks. And I think two of those flowers are named Ulysses and Fatima. And I just am so grateful that you have joined us today and that you are doing what you're doing. And, you know, if there's anything that you need from the progressive movement, you need to let us know, and you need to put the call out. And the wonderful thing about our beautiful imperfect network is that we do rise to the occasion. I hope you all have felt the support from the communities throughout this time, and just thank you for the opportunity. I know I'm personally very humbled to spend this time with you. I'm glad you see California Progressive Alliance as a valuable place to spend your time during Get Out the Vote. And do you want to say anything in close? We're up against the clock in about 6 minutes, but do you want to say anything in closing, either of you?
Please donate to Fatima. We need to get her on the assembly. How do we do that? Where does that money go? It goes to pay people to knock on doors, to have the conversations that are gonna break the messaging that is coming in through mailers. Look at who's paying for those mailers. It's corporations, landlords, the police. Do you really want them to be in charge of the representative that's gonna be representing your community? Please, this is the moment. We don't wanna look back and say, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. If you can't door knock, if you can't text bank, donate. Every single dollar counts to getting Fatima over the finish line. I'm gonna donate $100 today. I'll do more at the end of the month, but please donate to Fatima. We need to get her over the finish line.
Send Ulysses her ally. Fatima, tell us, give us our final best reason why we need a strong progressive in AD 65.
Yeah, I would love to, but I also want to just be very real for a second, because Ulysses knows I've been texting her today, and yeah, this is just very real. Like we've been investing so much in talking to voters. We don't get matching funds at the state level, right? So it's like every dollar raised is from the people, and that's what we need. We need public financing. We talk about that, but we need that at every level. So honestly, like for us to continue this momentum, we actually need people to donate, and that is like the God honest truth. We can't afford to reduce our field program right now. I mean, we have knocked on so many doors. At this point, thousands and thousands of doors. And
is that what's on your line, on the line right now for you, Fatima, your field program? Like,
honestly,
really
that is exactly what's on the line, because we have been ramping up at the right time. We were struggling finding people, and now we've hired I don't want to give too much, but we have like what 35 to 45 canvassers like on the ground, but that takes money, right? You pay them a living wage, they're canvassing. This is not the time to decline our canvassers. This is the time to increase. So please, your money is going to go to pay our canvassers a living wage. Shout out to them, by the way. It's not easy staying out there for hours, knocking on doors, but it's making a difference. Word on the street is just, I'll just say this, is that, I can't say too much information about this, but we have increased the amount of people that are, we increased our momentum and the amount of people that are now undecided that were maybe for Gibson. So that's what we're hearing. So we're going in the right direction. And the good news is, Michelle, a lot of folks in the district haven't voted yet. They do need to vote. About like 7,000 people. We're hoping the turnout will be around 100,000. So that means a lot of people are likely going to vote the last 2 weeks. So this is a perfect time for this event, because yes, we need your money, not for me, for our canvassers. Please, please, they will thank you for it. Our community will thank you for it. All the issues we talked about, all the change we want. I'm just one person, but I believe one campaign like Ulysses can inspire ripples, and build coalitions. And that's what it's about. So please support us. And one thing I wanted to say is that that if you can't for some reason donate, I hope someone can drop the links to our volunteer. We have phone banks, we have canvassing. So give of your time, whatever you can. Even one canvas ship before the election helps. Every door matters. Every conversation matters. So yeah, that's my pitch. That was just keeping it very real, because I care so much about not necessarily my title. Like, yes, I want to get there, because I see the potential for what transformative change looks like and what's not being done. And I know that our compassionate campaign needs to be there to be, like Missy says, the vessel and the vehicle for the community's voice to be heard.
That's why you're the one, because you're going to be real. You're always, there it is. Eunice's made her donation. You're always going to give it to us straight, Fatima, and that's why we're so supportive of you. And we really always want to see canvassers and all staff paid a living wage. We want to make sure that it's worth it for them, to make it worth it for the campaign, to make it worth it for the people, so that we can all do this together. So, it starts with living our ideals, like paying our staff a living wage. So thank you for doing that. Put a 5 on it, put a 27 on it, put a 50 or 100 on it for Fatima to get her over the finish line and send her to the assembly. I want to shout out the team at the California Progressive Alliance, Kate Ferreira, Jenny Lynn, and Luis Tirado, who made the tech happen and the promotion and things like that. Thank you to Ulysses and Fatima and your teams for supporting. And I know, Fatima, you have such a tight schedule. Thanks for getting here, and thanks for all your team members that helped you get here. And we're going to do this again soon when you're in office. All right. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate you, Michelle.
And thank you, Ulysses and Progressive California Alliance. And shout out to Jenny. I told her I'll give her a special shout out, because you did a lot of behind the scenes work, and everyone else, Louis. But thank you.
We got you, Fatima.
Okay.
Thank you.
Much love to everyone. Bye.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.